Welcome to Cindy's Corner. As always, this book review is brought to you by Winkle Media. You can always find our books and educational materials at winkle.media. Today, A Country of Mice. This is a folk tale from Asia. It is retold by Sunita, Apte. It's illustrated by Carol Littiment. It has a little chapter book. The chapters are very short, so you'll enjoy this. Here we have 4 chapters. The first chapter on our title page or our table or contents is A Favor is Granted. A favor is granted. A long, long time ago, there lived a very large community of mice. Generally, the mice lived well, with plenty to eat. But one year, the country's crops were poor. The mice who gathered their food from the grains left after the harvest found they would not have enough food to last until spring. The mice held a meeting to decide what to do. The Mouse King, who was known for his brilliance, came up with a plan. I shall go see the king of the country and make an appeal to him, the Mouse King declared. He knew that the king's subjects never hesitated to ask for help when they needed it. We have always heard that he is a generous and kind king, ruler, and I'm sure that he will help us, declared the Mouse King. So the Mouse King dressed up in his best gray suit and set off for the king's palace. It took him all morning to get there, and by the time he arrived, he was hot and tired. When the king of the country's footman announced that a mouse was there to see him, His Majesty was greatly amused. Let the mouse in, said His Majesty. I would like to discover what business he has with me. The Mouse King entered and bowed deeply. He then stated his reason for coming. Your Majesty, you are the most humbly in need of we are the most humbly in need of your help, the Mouse King pleaded. The crops were very poor this year, and we mice don't have enough to eat. We are in danger of starving unless you can lend us some food. How much food do you need? His Majesty asked. And how will you manage to transport it? We need one big barn full of grain, the Mouse King replied, which we will give back to you at the next harvest. I guarantee that. And as to know how we will carry it away, leave that to us. We can take care of the matter in a single night. His Majesty was uncertain, but he was also curious. So he agreed to give the mice one barn full of grain. He ordered the doors of one of the barns that stored grain to be left open so the mice could take what they needed. That night, the king of the mice gathered all of his subjects and marched to the barn. Hundreds of thousands of mice invaded the barn, all of them taking up as much grain as they could carry. By morning, the barn was completely empty. That winter, thanks to His Majesty's generosity, the mice didn't go hungry. And sure enough, at the next harvest, they paid back all of the grain, just as the Mouse King had guaranteed. The king of the country couldn't help but be impressed by how well the mice had kept their promise. He decided that mice made very loyal and clever subjects indeed. Chapter 2. An Offer to Help. Shortly after the mice paid back the grain, the king of the country was threatened by a neighboring kingdom across the river. The other kingdom was richer and more powerful, and soon it had an enormous army gathered on the banks of the river. The mice were very upset when they heard the news. They didn't want to live under another ruler, not when they knew how wise and kind-hearted the king of the country was. Just as they had done when they were running out of food, the mice gathered together. They discussed how they could help. They knew they owed His Majesty for his earlier generosity. So, once more, the Mouse King traveled to His Majesty's palace. The footman showed him in. "Your Majesty, I have come to offer the help of the mice in getting rid of your enemy," the Mouse King said. The king of the country was exhausted. He had stayed up all night planning a defense with his generals. Nevertheless, he was amused by the Mouse King's offer. "I don't even have enough of my own men to fight the enemy," he told the Mouse King. "How can mice, little creatures that you are, help me?" The Mouse King bowed deeply. "Leave that to me, Your Majesty," he said. "Rest assured, we wish to help you, and I think you will find that we can be very useful." The king of the country, not knowing what else to do, agreed to let the mice help. After all, he couldn't defeat the enemy alone. He needed all the assistance he could get. He listened quietly as the Mouse King outlined a plan. "This is a very brave thing you are offering to do," the king of the country said when he heard the Mouse King's entire plan. "Are you sure you and all the mice are prepared to see it through?" "Oh, yes, Your Majesty," replied the Mouse King. "We are confident in our plan, and we believe it will prove to be very successful." against the enemy. The king remembered how well the mice had performed when the food was short. Then, "I gratefully accept your help," he said. Chapter 3. The Mice Save the Day. The next evening after dusk, the Mouse King led several 100,000 of his subjects to the river bank. There they found thousands of small rafts made of sticks, which had been placed there as part of their preparations. The mice crept onto the rafts and rowed across the river to the enemy camp. Since it was nighttime, the enemy soldiers were all sound asleep. On the Mouse King's command, the mice scattered all around the camp and went to work. Quietly, they destroyed much of the camp as possible. Some of the mice chewed through the tent ropes, bowstrings, and clothes. Others ate up all the food they could find. Still, others chewed off the soldiers' hair, giving them unwanted haircuts. As best they could, the mice caused great trouble throughout the enemy's camp. Several hours later, their work was done. The mice got on the rafts and rowed back across the river. They had done their work so quietly that not one enemy soldier had woken up. Now all they had to do was wait for daybreak. When it came, the enemy camp was in an uproar. Soldiers awoke to find their clothes chewed up and their tents collapsed around them. There was no food for breakfast, and they all had very short hair. No one knew what was going on. In the midst of all the confusion, someone sounded a bugle on the opposite shore, as the Mouse King had requested. The enemy soldiers thought they were about to be attacked, already frightened by the night's events, and now not having the will to fight. The whole army began to flee. They marched quickly back to where they had come from, never to bother the king of the country again. Chapter 4. The Mice Get Their Reward. Of course, the king of the country was elated when he heard that the enemy had fled. He called the Mouse King to him immediately to thank him. "I am indebted to you," His Majesty told the Mouse King with great affection. "I will give you any reward you want. All you have to do is ask." The Mouse King had been waiting for this moment. This was his chance to guarantee the future safety of the mice. "I would only ask, Your Majesty, for this," the Mouse King said humbly. "I would like you to get rid of the two things that are most dangerous to us mice: cats and floods. Let there be no more of either in this country." Getting rid of the mice. Is that all? Consider it done, His Majesty cried. And so he immediately ordered all cats to be banished forever from the country, forbidding anyone to keep a cat as a pet. Then he sent his best workers to the river. He instructed them to build strong embankments along the river, which would keep the river from overflowing in the future, and therefore keeping the mice safe. The king of the country and the king of the mice were very pleased that they could count on one another. And from then on, everyone in the kingdom lived happily ever after. Except, of course, the cats. Now, I have a little kitten. That would have made me sad to get rid of my kitten. Now, I would like for you to think of the importance of helping those who are in need. What's the importance of helping someone else? How could you describe the two kings? Have you ever known anyone who reminds you of one of the kings? Throughout history, people have teamed up with others to share a common goal. Maybe in your community or your town, your school. How does this story fit into that idea? To analyze, and how does this story fit into helping people that you know? Tell me in the comments. And make sure you hit that like and subscribe. And most importantly, give somebody a hug and tell them you love them. Have a great day.